You are listening to 101.9 FM CFUV in Victoria, also streaming online at cfuv.uvic.ca.
Some people worry about money, others they fret about tests. Some carry the burden of romantic hurting, worthwhile stresses, I guess, but in the event of an emergency, don't cover your head or put it between your knees. Find your strength in this company, 'cause the seas will rise and the storms will rage. That's what you get when you've got climate change. Yeah, we got climate change. Critics and doubters sure will have 'em, but followers more there will be. It's simple attraction to life satisfaction, to love and profound harmony. But in the event of an emergency, don't cover your head or put it between your knees. Find your strength in this company, 'cause the lies will grow as the tempers enrage. That's what you get when you need social change. Yeah, we need social change. It's a story of courage and love, of heroes and progressive change that will carry us forward, together, onward. Together we'll find a better way. But in the event of an emergency, don't cover your head or put it between your knees. Find your strength in this company.
All right, that was Heather Bauer, who will be speaking at the BC Sustainable Energy Association's 2014-2015 Speaker Series. Over the next year, 6 talks on key energy issues facing our country will take place at the First Metropolitan United Church, located at 932 Balmoral Rd in Victoria. On October 20th, Heather will be presenting Behavioral Change, Empowering People to Influence Others on the Issue of Climate Change. Heather has worked for 10 years in government in the natural resource sector with a geography degree and a knack for holistic thinking and clear communications. Heather has found a niche as an engagement specialist on the issue of climate change. She most recently capped off a 5-year career with the Climate Action Secretariat with a trip to Climate Week, New York for the People's Climate March and other events. Born and raised in Victoria, Heather challenges herself to think outside the Pacific Coast green bubble and keeps current with the latest analysis on human behavior and environmental issues. Her talks are usually peppered with art, poetry, and music, as she recognizes the importance of engaging both sides of the brain when complex challenges such as climate change confront us. Heather, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So to start off, do you just want to give a little more background on this talk, on the October 20th, Influencing Others on the Issue of Climate Change?
Yeah, happy to. So I was approached by the BC Sustainable Energy Association, basically asked to kick off this really excellent series of talks that focus on sort of clean energy and approaches to lowering our carbon footprint, and within the context of the fact that there's a federal election coming up. And so there are 6 talks leading up to I guess it's Monday, September 21st next year, and that is going to be an all-candidates debate. So what's happening is there's going to be a talk about energy in buildings, transportation. There'll be a talk and discussion about a national energy strategy and carbon tax in Canada, and then building a viable economy based on sustainable energy. So those topics will be addressed over the coming months. And my talk is meant to sort of kickstart that by looking at why is it that we need to have this conversation, and how how do we actually talk about these issues among folks who are actually working on it and beyond those circles of people who are, steeped green and wanting to reach beyond to people who might not know as much about climate change and clean energy.
Now, when we talk about people who don't know much about climate change, I mean, I run in on a daily basis, I run into a few different types of people. I mean, if I think about it more, maybe a lot more different types. But what I'm talking about, you run into people who just don't care about the issue and want to continue their life, business as usual. I run into other people who are worried about climate change, but they continue, but they don't get involved, right? They don't, they learn about it, they talk about it, they complain about it, but they don't get involved. How can we influence these individuals? It seems like one of our greatest obstacles.
Yeah, it's a very good question, and unfortunately there's no silver bullet. It's a very, very complex field. There's research about the field itself coming out all the time. And I would say that you mentioned in my intro there that one of the tools that I found really important is using both sides of the brain. And because we think logically, but we also think from our emotional and collaborative side of our brain, the right-hand side of the brain. That being said, really what it comes down to when we want to engage people in a topic that is so complex and also deeply unsettling when you really uncover the facts of the issue, is that you listen to them. So this is something we know now, is that you can't make assumptions about what people need to hear. You actually have to find out from them what it is that they need to hear, to understand, in order to get them caring about the issue from their own set of values and their own interests. So sort of the short answer is you have to leave it up to their interpretation a little bit. That's where I find music and art to be helpful, because everybody can listen to a song or read a poem or see a piece of artwork, and it's about something, but to them it'll speak uniquely. So that's one little tidbit, but in the talk I'm going to be giving, I'll be going over a set of sort of recent research and understanding about what it is that drives us to accept this truth and then take action.
Now, you talk about using art to engage the left side of the brain, and you open with a great song, very catchy, something that stays in my head. It's one of those kind of songs that just remains in your head all day long. But over the years, it's interesting how artists, maybe think back to the 50s and 60s, they made songs about love and romance, and then it turned into songs about sex and cars and drugs, and then now in the 21st century, we're making songs about terrorism, climate change, how the government spies on you. Like there's plenty of songs. Yeah. So our artists today don't get to enjoy the lovey-dovey kind of romance. We got a job to do today. We got a different era to live in. What does that tell you about the 21st century and what we're up against?
Wow, I've not actually heard it sort of played, sort of described that way, but so that's new thinking for me. But you're right, there is this pressure on artists. It's I would say more of a responsibility of artists to examine what is relevant to people of the day and interpret it and explore it, right? And that's what we do as a society, is we explore these issues, and we typically do it through art and music and culture. That being said, I think a good example actually is a local artist, Danton J. He has written an album about sustainability. And his music is actually very metaphorical. He has songs about love and friendship and travel, but the underlying messages within it are that these things are set in the context of a world where we have a consumerist culture and capitalism that's maybe not being managed so well. So certainly I think artists have an ability to still bring us into that space where we are in touch with our values that include love and friendship and other things, but also to make us see ourselves in the context of the world and that we're in now.
I saw one of your, when I was researching, trying to learn a bit about you, I went on the internet and I saw one of your PDF presentations, and you had a list of reminding people about the urgency of climate change, and then we got to remind them about the urgency in the beginning, and we got to talk about our obstacles, and you had this list. Do you want to talk more about that?
Is that might be Cotter's framework for social change or for organizational change, maybe?
Yeah. You had a whole bunch of like these beautiful pictures. Can't remember that one.
I've got lots of content on the internet,
Okay.
but I'm thinking you might have stumbled across sort of a foremost thinker in organizational change theory, John Cotter, who's a Harvard Business Review author. And his work examines how do people accept the fact that we need to change. I mean, I think it goes without saying that change is hard. People like to have their beliefs reinforced, because if their belief is not consistent with reality, then they'll have to change, and they don't like that. So there's sort of this set of steps that we go through accepting change. And one of them is to accept that there's an urgency. John Cotter's list is quite long, but I would break it down to 3 pieces. And this is thinking that comes out of a friend of mine, Kara Pike, who works with Climate Access. So if anybody's interested in more on communications and climate change, climateaccess.org is a great resource. But it comes down to tension, that there's a tension between now and the future state that we need to get to. Efficacy, so there are things that we can actually do to get to that future state, and benefits. We really need to emphasize what are the benefits. And so the obstacles comes up where we sort of say, okay, well, these are things that are in our way, and then we identify quick wins, so things we can do right away. So for the average person in your community, that could be riding your bicycle. That could be installing solar hot water and saving money on your electricity bill. That could be buying carbon offsets because you have to travel for work or something, and you can neutralize that carbon. So it's about there's several steps, but that's how I would outline that.
Now, in your intro or in your bio, you were talking about the Pacific Coast Green Bubble, and you need to think outside that bubble. So what are you talking about when you say that?
Yeah, the green bubble. So those of us in the bubble aren't always aware that we're in the bubble. When you travel across the country or anywhere else, which I don't do very often, often I'm transported through social media or news articles. We are in a very unique sort of place on the planet. And I've experienced this in my work with government as well. Hearing from others observe British Columbia and our carbon tax and our carbon neutral government and some of the policies we have in place here. They go, how did you do that? Like, how is that even possible? And part of it comes down to the fact that we have a public that is very aware of the value of our natural environment and the need to keep it functioning, right? And so we are in a bit of a green bubble. When I was in New York City for the Climate March and Climate Week New York City, I sat next to a couple at dinner with my partner, and we had a nice chat with them. Turns out they were from Kansas, and they said, what were there's all these hundreds of thousands of people in the street. What was going on? And they honestly did not understand that this was, I mean, they knew it was something to do with environment, but they didn't quite get it. We had a conversation starting with, what is carbon? Right? So not everywhere has this experience of the exposure. And then in British Columbia, we still want more, right? Beyond that, you have China, which is grappling. Their emissions are crazy, and they are actually doing quite a bit. I mean, I could spend the whole time on the show talking about what they're doing. But But so in British Columbia, it's really useful for us to take a pause and look around the world sometimes and think about, well, what is it we're doing really awesome? Let's build on that success, and also take the perspective that this is a global issue. So I think that's what I mean by stepping outside the green bubble, is really paying attention to all the issues and the various contexts from a global scale.
Yeah, and I like to also mention that I think our politicians need to step out of whatever bubble they're in. You know, I would be for them to travel to places like Germany and Sweden to see what they're doing and learn what we can do here in BC and in Canada. So can you tell us about the New York, the climate march? You attended that, and that must have been very exciting.
Yeah, I wasn't actually anticipating going to the march when I planned to go to New York. Having worked on climate change for about 5 years, I was feeling as though I needed something to shake me out of sort of a state that I was in. And the state was not entirely positive, right? When you work on such an issue for so long and you're as passionate about it as I am, you get to a place of needing a perspective shake-up. So planned to go because I knew that there would be events related to climate. If I'm going to go across the country, I want to be doing it for a good cause. And it was an incredible experience to see hundreds of thousands of people gathered in the streets. And more heartening, for me anyways, was to see people on the sidelines watching, because you know that you're being watched. So while there was 400,000 people in the streets, there were millions more observing this outpouring of call for action. And I went to some high-level events while I was in New York as well, some events where there were politicians and carbon trading association experts and people from the World Bank, and was able to really get perspective from people on the streets, people who don't know anything about climate change at that dinner conversation, and then people who are actually really actively working with governments and associations. And what I can tell you is that they are actually quite hopeful now, that there is this real drive, there's a real awareness of this challenge that we're facing. And British Columbia is quite the leader on climate change. We were mentioned in several of the spaces I was in, especially with regards to a carbon tax. It's a real conundrum for some places. So we're really being applauded for that. But we also won't be the leader for very much longer. There is a real drive on across the continent and across the world to take action. So it will be a very interesting 2 years. I can tell you that much.
Well, I tell you, the one thing that motivates me is hearing about all these, all the progress and the larger crowds that are showing up to these types of events. Because you don't hear that in the mainstream media. So I do listen to shows like Democracy Now! And Guerrilla Radio on CFUV, and there's another program, This Can't Be Happening, coming out of, it's a program coming out of New Jersey, and you hear about the more and more people are getting involved in climate action. So it's a really good motivation. So it's good that we continue a show like this and continue to let people know that this is happening. So we still have 5 minutes left, and I do want to make sure we cover what you're going to be talking about in your presentation on behavioral change, empowering people to influence others on the issue of climate change. Do you just want to give us an idea of what you're going to be talking about, more details about that?
Yeah, I don't want to give it all away because I want you to come to the show, so to speak. But certainly, I can speak a little bit about what you actually opened with, which is that we all have people in our lives or that we know of who are people just like us that are going to be affected by climate change, and they're going to be affected in a variety of ways. One in particular you may have heard of on the news recently. Van City sponsored a report about food security in British Columbia. Food security is a topic I've been following very closely for the last 5 years or so. And the report, frankly, I don't think there's that much new information in it. It looks to be most of a consolidation of reports that have been done, in fact, by even authors at University of Victoria. Alec Austry is an expert on this. And it basically pinpoints the fact that our fruits and vegetables, I think broccoli and lettuce in particular, are going to be more expensive in the next year or so because of the drought in California. That affects everyone, right? I mean, that might prompt somebody to decide to grow their own vegetables in their backyard. So that is an example of a value that we all share that we can talk about. In fact, we do. We talk about it at the dinner table. We talk about it at the grocery store. Food is important, and we talk about that. So food's not the only frame, though, for talking about climate change. For the BCSEA series, we're talking about energy in particular. So transportation, how we save energy in our buildings, how we facilitate a renewable energy transition in BC and across the country. We know that we have a level of unburnable carbon in the atmosphere. And in fact, the World Bank recently was illustrating through a variety of workshops and such that, we have unburnable carbon. Like the World Bank, insurance companies. You've got huge multinational institutions that are responsible for, financial implications, raising awareness of the fact that we have to transition. And so it's not easy, though, right? I mean, we have a system that's kind of established. So I'm going to be speaking about things as simple as frames for how we talk to people and bringing it up to a level that connects it to what do we actually have to do across society. So how do you go from that, dinner table conversation to making a difference more broadly? It's not an easy thing to do. And so I'm gonna try my hardest to make it very simple, and we're gonna have some fun too, because I like music and art, and I think most other people do as well.
So for someone who is, kind of frustrated that, they know this is an important subject and they can't seem to get others involved or interested or talking about it, this is the presentation they want to hear.
Yeah, and I think too, that's definitely it. I mean, there's a lot of people working to communicate on climate change, and they kind of go with their gut on what they think needs to happen. But there's actually some counterintuitive things that happen in human psychology that's helpful for us to know when we're talking about this with other people. I'm also hoping to include some local decision makers. I want to invite them to come out and have this conversation as well, because they're challenged. I mean, a lot of them might feel very strongly about these issues as well, but they're speaking to the people that they represent who don't always understand these challenges. So I hope that some of them will come out as well.
Excellent. Well, just to recap that Heather, she's going to be speaking on October 20th at, where are we here? The First Metropolitan United Church, located at 932 Balmoral Road in Victoria. And I believe that's at 7 to 8.
Yeah, it starts at 7 o'clock. All the meetings in the series will start at 7 and go till 8:30. And so the presentation, I think, is around 40 minutes or so, and then there'll be questions and answers.
All right, Heather, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yes.
Thanks for having me.
Yes.
Thanks for having me.
Yes.